Hello, welcome to Ev's podcast. I am Everett, and this is
Evelyn. Today we're going to be talking about how our past histories have affected racism and our civil rights movement today, as well as gun violence and how that all ties together. First we'll be talking about Lincoln's 10% plan, which I never mean to diss on, but I always do slightly, which is because I believe it's basically what allowed racism to run rampant and have like an excuse. Like he gave the Confederates and the South a way out in a way. So the 10% plan originally happened when Lincoln wanted to get the Union back together as quickly as possible. So he basically said, hey, if 10% of you are against slavery in each state, I'll let you back into the Union, and these are Confederate states. So it's pretty easy to get 10%, but
Right.
if you think about it, 10% isn't a lot.
that doesn't really make any sense because if 10 people are like, you know what, slavery is just not it, but then the other 90 people are like, we want slavery because
Like it's
whatever
disproportionate,
reason. Right.
and
It
like
doesn't
it's sad.
make a lot of sense.
So basically, like a lot of people still were
still
okay with slavery, still
kept their
racist as
slaves,
heck,
didn't
right?
tell them that they were free.
That's another thing, yeah. Some slaves didn't know they were free because no one like taught them how to read, because again, slavery is a terrible curse on this world. So they never taught them how to read, so they never knew they were free because they couldn't read the "oh, you're free now." So it took a while for like mercy missions to get over there and make sure the South
Right.
was listening to the rules. So overall, the South got away with a lot of things because, again, Lincoln didn't really want to punish them either because he wanted them back as quickly as possible. And if you punish someone, they're less likely to rejoin you
Yeah.
smoothly.
Which I'll give him credit for because I think if he inflicted harsh punishments on the South,
We'd have more
on
problems.
Civil War Part 2.
It would just happen earlier. Like, we have problems now, but we would have had problems then.
Right.
So there was no perfect answer, I think, but the 10% plan definitely allowed for racism to continue onward.
And it continued onward into the Civil Rights Movement, which is famous for a number of reasons, the people involved and everything it helped to establish in our country today. For example, when the Supreme Court announced that it was effective, immediately going to integrate schools with colored children and schools with white children to be together. So basically no more education segregation. And in first look, that seems like a good idea. However, also relating to Lincoln's 10% plan, it just happened way too fast.
Like they wanted it fixed, so they just like crammed
boom.
it together. They were like, see this gap? We're just gonna smush it together and hope
No
it works.
downtime, no acclimation period, and so
It was handled sloppily, like
Right.
almost they didn't
It was
care
culture
enough.
shock.
Like the Supreme Court was kind of like, right, we're doing the right thing, just
Mhm.
get them in there. Like they didn't put the time in and the effort in
they
to
didn't
make
think
sure
about
it went
what
well.
they didn't think about what the kids would think because they're just kids. So they just get put into a room with a bunch of people they don't know and look different from them. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying it should have been either explained to them or like gradually integrated. Any number of ways this could have been.
Also, oftentimes this was really unfair to the black children who had this opportunity to go to a diverse
It's a better education.
Better, you're right, yep, better education. The communities were really hostile because they had been so used to their little 10% thing where they weren't used to ever getting punished for being racist and stuff because they got away with it. So now they have generations of people thinking they are above people of color,
Right.
and people of color don't belong there. And they think it's okay to be cruel, and it was
And
really
so,
unfair.
because of that effect that this 10% plan Lincoln initiated, where 10% of southern states were against slavery and the other 90 were for slavery, the children who were raised by the 90% just keep getting reassured that that is just normal. And so generations go by, and it brings us to today where we have mass shootings.
So hate crimes recently have gone up specifically against the Black community. Recently, Buffalo was an attack at a store in a primarily Black community, and it had white supremacist sentiment.
And the white supremacist wrote a manifesto about his beliefs, and it was in Texas, wasn't it? And so some senators have...
Was it? I mean, I don't know.
I don't know.
Maybe both.
Some people of power have quoted this.
Senators have quoted this manifesto that was written by someone
A
who
white
shot
supremacist.
people. And these senators are like, oh, well, yeah, immigrants are taking our jobs, and like stuff
Which
going on like that.
is not okay.
And I mean, they're saying, oh, of course we don't support the shooter. It's just, you know, some of these ideas are okay. It's like,
But that's just like, that's encouraging other people who think the same way. Like, oh, this guy got his beliefs like put on the internet. He got his voice
the thing.
shown.
Like, media is
Right.
great. Media is a great medium. I feel like this is actually what gives our generation hope.
Yeah.
Because maybe those people who have parents, like we said, who are part of the 90% that were racist as heck, can actually get media that is besides their parents' brainwashing, and hopefully maybe discover some truth.
Right.
But at the same time, media is a double-bladed sword where it brings attention to things. And sometimes the attention and the people it spreads to is detrimental.
Right.
Like the fact
fake news, just like it's it's I can't even talk.
the fact that people can so easily find out this white supremacist manifesto, and then senators can share their support,
Yes.
which makes other followers
Mhm.
think that's an
And
okay
then,
thing to support.
right, another 18-year-old with radical beliefs just goes by a gun, writes on a piece of paper, and then kills a bunch of people, and then boom, his views are now announced to the world, and people can hear what that person has to say, whether we wanted to hear it or not.
Because you shot up a school, so you have
Yep.
attention now. And that's another thing. It's really easy to get guns. Like, okay, I acknowledge that the Second Amendment is definitely an amendment, and no one is saying we're going to take away your guns, because
We
again,
don't
it's
have
the
to.
Second
We don't have
Amendment,
to.
and we don't need to. But it definitely shouldn't be that easy for an 18-year-old to get a gun that's not like for hunting, obviously, and the
That's-
amount of ammo
right.
he got,
It's
and then
a-
go and shoot up a school.
It's a weapon that's literally designed to kill as many people in as little amount of time as possible.
And we have to remember, when the Second Amendment was written, this was during where our founding fathers gathered around and wrote it after the Revolutionary War. And if you think about it, the reason it probably was included there was because we rose up against a corrupt governing system. And so it's a way for the people to have some power for themselves, so they feel like, if need to, they could put power behind their voices. So that's why you have the right to bear arms. But again, it was a very different time. Our founding fathers
Right.
probably...
They didn't know we were gonna have assault rifles.
And they probably thought we would stay united as a people. They probably thought, like, our government would hold, and we would,
Well-
if need to, we'd have weapons against an outer force, not the United States of America.
Right. We're not against some, like the militiamen were groups of civilians who would gather together and fight in the Revolutionary War against the British, but that's completely different than it was just a completely different time. Like, if someone in the Revolutionary War days had 8 cannons in their house, and a founding father was like, why do you need 8 cannons? Like, how are you even gonna use all of those?
Oh dear.
He's like, it's my right, but it's just a little silly.
And it's really sad because of how readily guns are available, especially to people who intend to do harm, that nowadays, the generation before us didn't really have shooter drills, which is something we do now often. Because
it's just normal.
and it doesn't do anything. It's similar to the nuke
duck and cover
the duck and
campaign
cover
during
campaign.
the Cold War.
And we all laugh. We're like, oh my gosh, that literally would have done nothing. It's a nuclear
Yeah.
bomb. And it's like, well, the same could be said for
Right.
shooter drills. Like a shooter can just kick down that door.
Because it's public information what a code red drill is. Everyone gets into the corner of the classroom and hides.
So
So-
it's just this helplessness that's reminiscent of a time when we were actually in a war against a foreign country. And that's really sad because I feel like this gap that our predecessors, Lincoln, all those people, tried to paste together with duct tape and other things that aren't very stable has been kind of breaking because, again, they try to do this very quickly.
Right.
And, you know, they didn't really have many options.
They were thinking short term.
And they were thinking short term,
Right.
but ultimately it's,
Just you two, huh? You guys working on your project?
yeah.
How do you do?
So I'm sure we all would like to live in a world where we could go to school and
It's a
not
safe
think about
space.
being killed, which seems like a bare minimum. I saw
Such a low bar. Such a low
This
bar.
is a little bit unrelated, but I see YouTube ads for like political campaigns where it's like, I want to lower taxes, and I'm like, where's my political candidate that just doesn't want kids to be murdered in school?
I don't
Where's
want
that
kids to be murdered in
representation?
school.
That's all I'm asking
Yeah,
for here.
get some attention. But ultimately, a way you can do something is be vocal. When you're old enough, vote.
Don't
Make
just let-
sure you have proper resources. We talked about this in class. Make sure it's a valid resource, not this fake news, because unfortunately there's a lot of that now. It's really easy to pull something up and just find the immediate answer that you've been looking for, instead of looking thoroughly and finding an accurate source.
Right.
Unfortunately, in the age of media, although it's beautiful and wonderful, it's very easy to get misinformed.
So, that being said,
Thanks for watching.
thanks for watching. Stay safe.